Hi, welcome to Mom Cooks and Gardens. So this morning we're going to try a little recipe. It is November, probably around the 10th, and you can see here we've gotten a lot of these little mini, what are they called? Poblano peppers from the garden, and some of these little yellow-green peppers. They're like a yellowish green. Not sure what they are, but because it's the end of the season, they're not getting quite as large as they were. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun to make some sort of like pepper poppers? And the other day at work, they made stuffed peppers, and I thought maybe I could do like a Middle Eastern, like some ground beef and lamb, mixed with some cumin, some feta cheese, maybe use quinoa instead of rice, and stuff these mini peppers, and then roast them. So I'm going to give that recipe a try. So I think we're going to use a couple of these shallots. Probably these shallots came from our garden. I think 3 or 4. And we've got this many peppers. We'll probably use a pound of ground beef. And last night I put on a pot of quinoa. So we've got, you know, about a cup of quinoa, which cooks up to be about 2 or 3 cups. I'll show that to you here. And I refrigerated the quinoa so that the protein's kind of set up, and we'll fluff it. And whatever we don't use in the peppers, we'll use as a side dish. All right, so we've diced up some of the shallots, and I decided to utilize some of these little tiny no-heat jalapenos that we grew, and I've got them diced up. So we've sauteed the shallots. I think we had 4 or 5 of those little guys, and we'll go ahead and add in some of the heatless jalapeno. And we just want them to soften. Used a little bit of olive oil. And I'm going to mix that into the ground beef. Whew, jalapenos going everywhere. We turn down the heat a little bit. Actually, I'll turn it down a lot. And you can really smell the jalapeno, even though it doesn't have any heat. It smells spicy. And you could use a little heat if you like it. It's just the poblanos have a slight bite, and the heatless jalapeno has just about the same amount of bite. So it won't be too spicy. I'm going to turn that off. Just let it sit. And then in the meantime, we got our ground beef. So to this is about a pound of ground beef lamb mix. I added 5 or 6 good cracks of sea salt and some granulated garlic just to add some more flavor, and several cracks of pepper. So I would salt and pepper your ground meat like you would if you were going to make a meatloaf. Because that's essentially what we're doing, is making a meatloaf and stuffing it into the peppers. So let's see here. Then I'm going to add just a little bit of cumin. Several shakes. And we're going to knead that up, and then I'll introduce the quinoa. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and knead the meat mixture with the salt, the pepper, the cumin. Just try to make sure that I get it all combined. Just fold it all in. Kind of doing this one-handed. And then to that, we can add most of our sauteed vegetables. We'll go for all. Why not? And then I'll use both hands, fold that all in. Get the shallots and the jalapenos. My mother always used to cut the bottoms off of large bell peppers when making stuffed peppers so that they sat flat and the juices could drain. And then she would dice up those little ends and the tops that she cut off, and she would incorporate them. So that's why I'm doing it like this. And again, we're making stuffed peppers, so why not have some peppers in the meat? I wanted to show you this. So these little peppers that we grew in the garden, they have very thin walls. Now, Scott doesn't like stuffed peppers in general. He complains that they're watery and they just aren't palatable to him. So that's why when I saw how thin they were, we diced them up and use them in fajitas. I thought they might actually make a pretty good stuffed pepper because it's not going to be like overly juicy or wet like some stuffed peppers can turn out. So that's another reason why I kind of came up with this idea to make like a stuffed Middle Eastern pepper. So next I'm going to fold in the quinoa. Let's get you here. I know it's very hard to see on these one angles. There. So I have about this much meat, and I'm thinking I'd like to do 1/3 as much quinoa. So I fluffed this quinoa ahead of time so that it's nice and loose. And then I think what I'll do is I'll start to add some. And then decide from there how much more I need to add, because I don't want them to be overly dry, but we do need a binder. And it also helps to soak up some of that moisture so that you don't have wet peppers. Now I can already tell by the volume of peppers that we do have and the amount of ground beef that we'll probably, after stuffing them, you know what, I'm going to do the whole thing here. We'll probably make these into a meatball, so the quinoa is going to kind of serve like breadcrumbs. So we'll have some meatballs, we'll have some, I'm just trying to break up these. And then I'll show you. So that looks like a pretty good mixture to me. It's got some nice color with the red and green jalapeno in there. And of course shallots, you can never go wrong. Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, so the next step is I'm gonna grate some feta cheese. So I want some fine crumbles. I don't want anything too chunky, but I do want there to be some pieces. So we'll just see how this works out. I tend to buy my feta in blocks because sometimes I like to eat it as a snack and sometimes I like to crumble it into salads. So by buying it as a block, I can kind of process it whatever way I'd like. And it's fairly easy. Just kind of running these little crumbles. Okay. So essentially, I just kind of want a consistency about like that. But for this amount of meat, I think we're going to want just a little bit more. So I'll break off another block. If there's too much, we'll use it in a salad. Also, the thing I like about feta is when it heats up, it doesn't truly melt. It softens, but it kind of holds its shape, so it does well in like cornbreads and other applications. So I think rather than dissolving into the meatloaf mixture, it's gonna hold its own. So I'm gonna grab a handful, sprinkle it over. And I think I was probably right in the proportions. I would say it was probably a good solid 1/4 cup for this mixture. And I'm going to stir it in. So I really think this flavor profile is going to work out really well. The quinoa, the peppers, the feta, the cumin. I'm really excited and interested to see what this profile is going to taste like. But again, you can play around with it, leave things out. You could add cilantro or parsley, which is, I think that's what I'll do. So peeking through the spice cabinet, I'm definitely going to use some parsley flakes, but I found some of our coriander that we grew this spring. So what I'm going to do is grind some coriander. I think that's really going to add to the flavor that we're going for. And I think maybe a tablespoon. I don't want to overdo it. Some people don't like coriander. There are times that I wish I had a spice smell, but I find that using just a pestle allows me to grind a little bit or a lot, and sometimes when you just need a tad bit for, like, you know, fried potatoes or something like that, it's just easier to grind it by hand, otherwise you lose it to the sides of the grinder. This might take me 5 or 10 minutes, so I won't bore you with the details. So after grinding the coriander, I kind of feel like a tablespoon might be too much. So I'm just going to go with a teaspoon instead of the ground coriander. I don't want it to be overwhelming. Yeah, I think that's definitely the best way to go. But start off with a teaspoon of parsley, a little bit more. I think that looks great. So I'm going to put a drizzle of olive oil in there. Put my gloves on. Put the spices aside. And then we're going to incorporate everything. Now, I've never known stuffed peppers to have a binder. My mother never used a binder. And I think it's because the peppers themselves kind of keep your mixture intact. We may need to add a little bit of egg for the loose meat that's left over. And now that we have all that mixed, I got myself a nice sheet lined with aluminum foil. And I'm going to use these for the peppers so that any liquid can drain. And I'll grab some of them here. And then we're just going to stuff them. Try and get the meat down in there. Don't want any hollow peppers. There we go. So I'm sticking that meat way down in there. Drop that guy. I'm just going to keep going about stuffing these guys. Until they're all done. All right, so this is what we have left, about a ½ pound. We've stuffed all our peppers. And I think I am going to add an egg, but I don't think I'm going to add the whole egg. I think I'm just going to add the egg white. I just want a little something to bind it together without making it taste too eggy. So I just kind of rocked that out. just to get the egg white. Oop. Set him down somewhere where he won't roll. There. And then we can mix in the egg white. This should be enough to bind together the little meatballs. Now I had an extra large egg. If it had been a small egg, I probably would have used the whole thing, but I was just trying to keep it from getting too eggy, which is why I sifted it out. All right. So I'm gonna roll these little meatballs probably about as big as the thickest pepper. So you can see there, if he were to go on top, he would fit in. That way everything will kind of cook relatively at the same rate. Now some of these smaller peppers, the smaller peppers may cook faster and we can always remove them. But I think what my goal here will be, I'm just pulling meat from over here. My goal will be to, like, ever so often pop a little thermometer in. And I'm not sure, but I think I'm gonna cook these just like you would cook any other stuffed pepper, like 375. And of course, because of their small size, who knows how long that's gonna be for. Could be a half an hour. Just gonna do an internal temperature of 165, I think. Now the leftover quinoa, you know, I did want to have quinoa as a side dish for this meal, so I cooked a full cup and it gave me like nearly, I would say at least 3 cups of quinoa. So we used about a cup in the meatloaf mixture or stuffed pepper mixture, and the rest we'll just kind of do some sauteed carrots and maybe some onion and garlic, and we'll spice up that quinoa as a side dish. And I did use chicken broth as the liquid for the quinoa, so that it did have some flavor. That way the side dish isn't bland. If you weren't going to use it as a side dish, you could probably get away with only doing a half a cup of quinoa, and you could just use straight water and salt your mix. But I find there's just enough salt in the bouillon that I use that I can get away with just using bouillon, cook it straight, and then there's so many ways you can season it. So if you're not going to use it all in one shot, you can do many, many things with it. Nearly all the little meatballs done. I think we can put these little guys probably 3 deep. I would move the camera around a little, but both hands are dirty, so don't want to gum up my camera. If I had more peppers, I would have made more stuffed peppers, but these were kind of like the end of the season. It's really all that was left on the vine. And I thought, what can I do with these besides make fajitas or stir fry? All right, so there we go. This should be ready to go into the oven, but I'm going to preheat it first. Probably, I think I have it set to, let's look here, 400. I think we're going to do 350. And I'll set these aside. So while our peppers are cooking, we're gonna go ahead and get the ingredients for the quinoa side dish. So I tried growing parsnips. I got a couple little guys. He was probably my biggest. We had some problems with like gophers and stuff, but they turned out fairly nice. I'm gonna go ahead and wash them, peel them, and then dice them. The thing I love about parsnips are that they're very sweet. They're a lot like a carrot, but they have more of an earthy taste to them. And I was really excited to try growing these this year. So I learned a lot, even though I didn't get a large harvest. I did learn that in our garden, they're growing better than the carrots are for sure. You know, I think I would plant 10 times as many because I only planted like maybe 15. And whatever little critter decided that he liked them, he went in and really nibbled the tops off, so the others didn't have a chance. But yeah, if I plant like 10 times as many, I'll get a bigger harvest. And parsnips, like carrots, keep a long time. So, you know, had I a bigger harvest, these would have stayed in the vegetable crisper probably through February or March. And I'm dicing them pretty small. One, because I don't have a lot of them, so I do want there to be enough distributed in the side dish. But two, I like the fine texture of quinoa, so I don't want large chunks of vegetables kind of interfering with the eating experience. And they do soften just like carrots. You can actually treat them exactly like a carrot. Probably should have used a sharper knife. parsnip. Now it does occur to me, the quinoa being kind of tan and beige, and having parsnips that are tan and beige and onion that's white. It's going to be kind of a colorless dish, but I think we'll just add some probably parsley, some green. We could dice a small carrot just for color. We'll have to see. So it looks as though the oven is just about preheated. So we'll go ahead and take our little pepper stash. Set it right over here. Oops, some of them fell off. Let's get it out. I think I'm going to use some of the foil there. Reach in and grab these guys. Slid off. Boom. Pop him up here. Boom, boom. There we go. And our timer is set at about 30 minutes. So we'll just keep an eye on them. In the meantime, we're going to bring our little saucepan on. It's like medium high. Put a nice drizzle of olive oil. And I'm going to add the parsnips first because the onion cooks a lot faster. Alright, so our little parsnips are simmering. Now the reason I chose to use the little sauce pot is because we can just go ahead and roll into, just put a pinch of salt so that it sweats the parsnips. But the reason I chose it was so that we can just roll right into adding the quinoa and then putting a lid on it and it will steam. We may add a little bit of extra chicken broth just to heat it up so we don't burn the quinoa. Now, if you were to make your quinoa fresh, fresh quinoa can get kind of pasty if you overcook it just slightly. But when it comes to making things like fried rice, stuffed peppers, or any other type of application where you're going to be using your grains as like a binder, I like to refrigerate them so those proteins set up and they stay firm and separated when you're frying or reheating. So I think we can go ahead and add the onion. I might add one more crack of salt to help sweat the onion. There's very little salt in the quinoa, just what was in the broth, so I'm not worried about over salting the vegetables. And I'll turn that down to like a low. And I'll just keep an eye on them, keep stirring them. Everything's doing well in here. Thinking I might turn the temperature up just a little, just a notch. So like maybe 375. I'm a little nervous. I'm cooking this before work, so I have to leave at like 1:30 and it's 12. So that gives me an hour and a half, which, you know, meatloaf sometimes can take an hour, and that's a full meatloaf. These guys are tiny, so I don't expect them to take that long, but I want to make sure that I get everything cooked before I have to walk out the door. So I just added the quinoa to the mixture with a 1/4 cup of chicken broth. I just want there to be enough moisture to heat everything back up. Add some parsley. Pretty good. I could like more flavor. I feel like it's missing something. I'm not sure what. Add a little bit of bouillon powder and a little bit of garlic granules. A little more parsley. Yeah, I think that did the trick. So I'll move it to the back, let that sit. And then after a few minutes, we'll just fluff it up because of the added liquid. We don't want it to be mushy. But it's a little mild. I'm hoping that the meat is going to be really super spicy, so hopefully it'll balance the whole meal out. We'll just watch that cook. Take a peek. Looks like it's doing fairly well. After we start to get some browning, we'll go ahead and flip them using some tongs. We'll flip everything. I don't want to turn it up too high, but maybe I should. Maybe I should turn it up to like 425. Put a nice browning on it. Originally, I wanted to do this out on the grill so that I could char the outside of the peppers. But today is so windy and cold, and Scott's not here to turn on the gas, and you know, one person coming in and out with pups is hard. So right now I'm just kind of rolling the little meatballs. And I think I'm going to roll the peppers as well. He doesn't want to roll. There we go. Now, since the meatballs are about as big as the largest pepper, we can use them to take a temperature as well. I'll take it from several different directions just to make sure they get cooked all the way through. And see if I can find my meat thermometer. There it is. One of my most favorite tools in the kitchen. It allows you to check the temperature of your meat, keep it consistent, make sure that everything's food safe. So the peppers and the meatballs have been going now for about 30 minutes on 375. So we're just going to peek and see what our internal temps are. This guy is a pretty big pepper. We're definitely close to 170. Boop. So I think they are done. But what I am going to do is just turn up the heat just slightly. I think I want to put a little bit of a browning on them. So we'll give them a couple more minutes in there on 450. All right, so it looks like after a couple minutes on, everything looks nice and browned. We got a little bit of blistering going on the peppers, which I think will be perfect. So I'm just gonna go ahead and shut this off. I'll give it a few minutes to cool down a little. I'll leave the door open. And then we'll, I guess, put them away for Scott when he gets home. But yeah, they look really, really good. So I thought I would taste one of these guys. Just cut him open. They look really good with the feta cheese in there. Got the little bit of red pepper. The flavors are really good. It turned out better than I hoped. I can really taste the shallots and the cumin, and it's got the feta cheese adds that little sharp saltiness. So I'm really pleased with these. I think I definitely would make them again. Very hot. But I think in the future I would spice up the quinoa just a little in the first cook, because I feel like it's hard to backspice the quinoa as a side dish. It's a little on the bland side, but really happy with the peppers. I think they're different. I think it's definitely a spin on stuffed peppers. Ooh, dropped one. But yeah, you can see him there. He looks really good. He's got a little bit, I think on the grill, some char would really turn out. But yeah, they're like little stuffed jalapeno poppers. Or not jalapeno, but you know, poblano poppers. Yeah. So if you like this recipe, remember, always like and subscribe for more, and stay tuned because we're gonna work on some apple cider in the next coming week. And I think we're also going to cook up one of our Jarradale pumpkins that we grew in the garden and do a test run for our pumpkin pie on Thanksgiving. Thanks for watching.